Yeah, I just wanted to talk about what do you guys think about the increasing split in the left? Because I've noticed that one common thread has been that the leftists who are always the type to downplay cultural issues are the ones who are like kind of like contrarian on this Ukraine thing. They're the ones who were contrarian on the vaccination issue. So I think actually it was a mistake for the left kind of to assume that we could just have a class-based movement, because people who were not like left on class issues have turned out to be the people who were like the Greenwalds and the Taibbi.
Well, that's why I got to stop you. Like those people aren't representatives of the left. Like
it's just an
Greenwald's
online thing.
Libertarian. He's always just been a libertarian.
A lot of libertarians call themselves leftists now because of the dynamic I was talking about earlier with the Republican Party. Like the people who openly identify as libertarian have become like a stigmatized group online. So a lot of people look for like other words to describe themselves that are not libertarian, like, or ANCAP, obviously. So, that's where like labels like that become a little bit inexact, because anyone can just call themselves anything. But over a person's career of like tweets and like articles, you kind of get a feel for what their actual politics are on each individual issue. And then you kind of glean that like, this is just a libertarian, or this is just like a traditional liberal. I think a lot of people have learned to say that they're on the left because that's like the cool thing to say. And it also immunizes you from like a certain questions about your politics.
Yes. Also, you said the left made a mistake of just making it all about like the class war. But I also ask you there, what left are you talking about? Because on this show, certainly not. I remember distinctly having discussions with Michael Brooks on this show back in 2014, 2015 about how that's not intersection. You're not being intersectional if you're just talking about the class war, because you're ignoring all the other issues that get involved in that, even from that aspect.
Well, I'm not talking about you guys. You guys.
No, of course.
I'm talking about places even like that are respected. Like sometimes I'll see like places like Jacobin, who I think is ostensibly on the left, and there's a focus on really, or like what motivated Trump voters? Was it pure and it's framed as if it was a purely class thing. So,
yeah, I don't agree with that analysis.
But I got to say, I'm more concerned with this idea. Like, I think class does need to be foregrounded, even when you're talking about like issues of identity. I think when you talk about issues of identity, you should make those topics also of class. Like, I think class is like I count me among the people that always thinks that class does need to be inserted in these conversations, not necessarily made the overriding factor, because I do think like that leads to some dumb analysis, absolutely, and there's a whole history of that leading to problems within the left movement. But like I do have a major problem with particularly these guys that are all libertarians being used as examples of pathologies on the left, because I think a lot of these things are like debatable, and it's a process of struggle that we need to like keep fighting about these things. So I'm a little bit wary of a rush to like condemn the left as too class focused, because I do think like class needs to be included in these conversations.
Right, and in terms of like saying Jacobin, like Jacobin's a magazine that hosts a variety of left perspectives. So it's not. I mean, they had that article on NATO and Ukraine 12 hours before, and then 12 hours later there was an article on that I loved on Russian opposition to the war within Russia. That was like something I totally agreed with. So I mean, I think that those outliers and the class reductionist element gets an over focus because
libs who don't want to talk about class are very anxious about it. That's a bigger problem, I think. So
point well taken, and I'm gonna hang up soon, caller, if you just want to make your final point. D.
And then the other point, because I don't have much time, is do you think that can extend into electoral politics in terms of realizing sometimes even people I agree with will sometimes talk about, this policy polls at 85%, and then we can win if we go on this policy, not realizing that whoever supports the policy, let's just say it's AOC or Nina Turner, is going to have to face, is going to come with the cultural stuff that's going to be a turnoff to voters. So it can't be a pure policy platform, if that makes sense.
What cultural stuff? What are you talking about when you say cultural stuff?
I'm saying sometimes we'll cite like, oh, well, 75%, we can win a place like West Virginia because 75% of people in the state support this leftist policy, but they don't realize that the candidate who would run in West Virginia is going to be a Democrat that has, good culture, that has good stances on cultural issues, and those are going to be a deal breaker for those voters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
I don't know what a cultural, like, I don't know what you're talking about when you say a cultural issue.
Like, if
you mean they're black?
Like yeah, that's what. Either they're black,
and that's a human. That's like a civil rights issue, though. That's not a
called the
cultural,
urban demographic. That's the proper euphemism for.
Like when we talk,
black
when you're talking cultural issue, you're talking like I don't know, like a movie like Star Wars was the Republicans hated Star Wars or something.
I see what you're saying. I think the thing that we need to worry, I mean, I don't really agree with you in terms of the like demographic point, but the point being that like extrapolating national popularities about policies and not making them specific to the races and the states and the municipalities in which people are running is a fatal flaw, I think, of the left sometimes. But appreciate the call, D. Thank you. We really got to do some clips.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay.
I would just say
the reason I was honing in on that, and I'm not saying the caller, I don't think the caller meant anything by it, but I've seen this a lot. I forgot who it was. Some reporter at a major newspaper basically said, like, I don't get why Democrats don't just give in to the anti-trans stuff and then pick up wins elsewhere. This cultural issue, the folks in the cultural issue stuff is so dumb. And it's just like, no, that's not, trans rights are not a cultural issue.
Oh. All right, Binder froze.
Binder, you want to go, Brandon?
Well, yeah, I was going to kind of echo Matt's point where I think that, one of the issues with the cult, no, not what the call was saying, but one of the issues with people identifying themselves as leftists, I think it's really easy for people to imagine themselves as being some kind of radical once they find themselves or perceive themselves being implicated by something that, previously, by something in our political system. And so you get a lot of people as poverty expands in our country, as the middle class shrinks, who find themselves suddenly implicated by like class issues and, suddenly deciding that like being implicated by like class issues and that the acceptable level of like leftism or progressivism is whatever like, point includes you and then everything else becomes a cultural issue is I think where we find ourselves at, where it's like, it's easy for people to imagine that they're, even across like the liberal spectrum of like Democrats who are just like run-of-the-mill Democrats, like the shorthand for being a radical Democrat is that they're black. And because that means there's like, because of their identity and because of the experiences and the way that they're implicated by blackness, oftentimes they're slightly better about like anti-black issues or pro-black issues, I guess in this case. And so, part of being a leftist has to be about a broad philosophy of like how we should treat each other in like global politics and like criminal justice, et cetera, not just like the politics of how you personally make your sphere of life better and then everything outside of that is just like, well, that's just like a fringe issue, right? So I think that some people have learned that leftism is a proper vehicle by which they can elevate themselves and not necessarily like leftism is about a total reconstruction of like society and how we like identify each other.